Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're going to explore why yes, comfortable, modern you, would absolutely crumble within hours of waking up in the Ice Age. Picture this. You're lying on cold stone, your breath forming ice crystals in the air, and somewhere outside your cave, something very large and very hungry is sniffing around for breakfast. Spoiler alert, you might be on the menu. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so drop your location and local time in the comments below. Alright, let's begin the story. You open your eyes to complete darkness. Not the kind where your phone screen eventually illuminates your bedroom. This is the suffocating black of a cave system 30,000 years before electricity. Your first instinct is to reach for your phone, but instead, your hand touches something furry and definitely dead. That's your blanket. By the way, a poorly preserved bearskin that smells like a combination of wet dog and existential dread. The temperature inside your limestone shelter hovers around a balmy -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Outside, a crisp -40 that would make your trendy Canada Goose jacket cry synthetic tears. You can't feel your toes, which might be frostbite or might just be Tuesday in the Pleistocene epoch. Scientists still debate whether early humans woke up every morning surprised they had survived another night, or if they'd simply accepted perpetual hypothermia as a lifestyle choice. Your cave mates are stirring now, about 12 other humans who've somehow decided you're worth keeping around despite your complete inability to contribute anything useful. They communicate in grunts that you're pretty sure translate to, "The useless one is awake." You've been trying to learn their language for weeks, but every time you think you've mastered good morning, you apparently say something that means your mother mates with ground sloths. The fire from last night has died down to embers, and everyone's looking at you. See, in your time, starting a fire involves clicking a lighter or maybe rubbing 2 Boy Scout badges together. Here, it requires an intricate understanding of friction, tinder types, and proper ventilation, none of which you possess. You grab 2 rocks and start banging them together like a toddler with kitchen pots. The tribe elder, a weathered woman who survived an impressive 35 winters, shakes her head and takes over. She produces fire in under a minute, using techniques that anthropologists would later spend entire careers trying to reconstruct. Outside the cave, you hear it, a low, rumbling growl that makes your primitive brain scream, "Nope," in every language that hasn't been invented yet. That's a saber-toothed cat. And fun fact, they didn't just have those teeth for show. Those 9-inch fangs could puncture your skull like it was made of particularly disappointing yogurt. The mainstream historical record tells us these cats were apex predators. But here's something your textbooks left out. They were also incredibly patient. Some evidence suggests they'd stalk human settlements for days, learning routines and picking off the slowest members. Guess who's been designated the slowest member? Your stomach growls, reminding you that DoorDash is about 299 centuries away from being invented. The last thing you ate was some suspicious berries that made your vision go funny for 3 hours. The tribe's breakfast plan involves checking the trap lines they set yesterday, a complex system of snares and deadfalls that you helped with by mostly standing nearby and trying not to touch anything important. You stumble outside, and the cold hits you like a frozen sledgehammer wielded by an angry physicist. The landscape stretches endlessly, a tundra punctuated by the occasional desperate shrub and the bones of creatures that didn't quite make it. In the distance, a small herd of woolly mammoths moves like hairy mountains against the horizon. You've seen them in museums, all bones and impressive tusks. But nothing prepared you for the reality of living alongside something that could accidentally step on your entire bloodline. The morning routine here doesn't involve coffee or checking emails. It's an immediate scramble for survival, checking if predators visited during the night, seeing if any tribe members froze to death, and determining whether today's the day you finally starve. Your contribution to this routine consists mainly of shivering violently and making sounds that concern the children. The hunting party assembles, and somehow you've been included. This isn't an honor. It's because even the 8-year-olds are getting tired of watching you fail at basic tasks around camp. Your spear is a crooked stick that the weapons master gave you with the same energy as a parent handing their toddler a toy phone. Everyone else carries beautifully crafted tools with hafted stone points that took weeks to knap properly. You're pretty sure yours is just a branch that fell off a tree during last night's windstorm. You trudge through knee-deep snow, following tracks that everyone else seems to read like a newspaper. The lead hunter points at some indentations and makes a series of hand gestures that apparently communicate, "Rabbit went this way, approximately 2 hours ago, favoring its left hind leg, probably heading to the berry bushes near the frozen stream." All you see is snow with some holes in it. When you try to contribute by pointing at what you think might be tracks, the entire party stops to examine what turns out to be places where icicles fell from a tree. The rabbit appears suddenly, a white blur against white snow that your modern eyes completely missed until it was already bounding away. Everyone springs into action with choreographed precision, except you. You throw your stick spear with all the athletic prowess of someone whose most intense physical activity is usually speed walking to catch an Uber. The spear travels about 4 feet before nosediving into a snowbank. The rabbit stops, turns around, and you swear it's laughing at you. Here's something historians argue about. Did prehistoric humans actually persistence hunt, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion? The answer becomes crystal clear as you wheeze and stumble after the hunting party. After roughly 30 seconds of jogging through snow, your lungs burn like you've been gargling volcanic ash. The others aren't even breathing hard. One of them is literally carrying a dead deer from an earlier catch and still outpacing you. The rabbit leads you all on a merry chase toward a grove of stunted pines. This is where things get interesting, because you're about to learn that Ice Age rabbits aren't the cute, carrot-munching fluffballs from your century. These are hardcore survival machines with powerful hind legs that can cave in a predator's skull and an attitude problem that would make a honey badger seek therapy. The lead hunter signals for everyone to fan out, creating a semicircle to trap the prey. You position yourself on the end, mainly because nobody trusts you in a critical spot. What happens next becomes the story the tribe will tell for generations, though probably not in the heroic way you'd hope. The rabbit, sensing the trap, makes a break directly toward you. This is your moment. You raise your pointy stick and promptly trip over a root hidden under the snow. As you fall, your flailing arm somehow managed to smack the rabbit mid-leap. It lands, stunned, and for one glorious second, you think you've actually contributed to the hunt. Then a mammoth appears, not hunting the rabbit, mind you, just wandering through, probably thinking deep mammoth thoughts about grass and avoiding tar pits. But its appearance triggers a chain reaction of chaos. The rabbit recovers and bolts. You're still on the ground, now being stepped over by hunters pursuing the rabbit. The mammoth, startled by all the commotion, trumpets loudly, a sound that makes your bones vibrate and your bladder seriously consider its options. Fun fact that doesn't make it into most textbooks, Mammoths were notoriously flatulent. As this one passes by, it releases a cloud of methane that could probably power a small city in your time. The smell hits you like a physical force, a combination of fermented grass, sulfur, and what you imagine disappointment would smell like if it ate only cabbage. You gag, roll over, and come face to face with a rabbit, which has circled back and is now sitting 2 feet away, apparently enjoying the show. The other hunters have given up the chase and are now watching you have a staring contest with dinner. Prehistoric rabbits, it turns out, can maintain eye contact in a way that feels personally insulting. You slowly reach for your stick, and the rabbit tilts its head as if to say, "Really? We're still doing this?" When you lunge forward, it hops casually to the side, and you faceplant into mammoth dung that's still warm enough to steam in the cold air. The hunting party returns to camp empty-handed, except for the deer from earlier. You're covered in mammoth excrement and shame, a combination that transcends language barriers. The children point and laugh, making sounds that are definitely the Paleolithic equivalent of epic fail. Even the tribe's dogs, wolf-like creatures that barely tolerate humans, seem to be judging you. One of them sniffs you and immediately decides you're not worth the effort of either befriending or eating. The mammoth dung incident has earned you a new nickname that sounds like someone choking on permafrost, but you're pretty sure it translates to steps in poop. The tribe's clothing specialist, a gruff woman with fingers like leather straps, takes one look at your modern synthetic fibers now caked in prehistoric fertilizer and makes a sound that's universal across all human history, disgust mixed with pity. She holds up your North Face jacket between 2 sticks like it's contaminated with the plague, which, considering where you've been rolling, isn't far from the truth. You're about to learn why fashion in the Ice Age wasn't about looking good. It was about not becoming a meat popsicle. The specialist strips you down in temperatures that make your equipment try to retreat inside your body cavity, then hands you what appears to be a raw bear pelt. Not a nicely tanned, professionally treated pelt like you might see in a museum. This is freshish, still slightly sticky with remnants of its former owner, and it smells like a gym bag that died and came back as a worse gym bag. Just wrap it around yourself, you think. But that's like saying, just perform brain surgery to someone who can't operate a can opener. There's an entire technology to preparing hides that you're about to fail spectacularly at understanding. First, the hide needs to be scraped clean of fat and membrane, a process that requires specific stone tools and a technique that won't puncture the skin. You're handed a scraper that looks deceptively simple, just a piece of flint with a worked edge. You rake it across the hide and immediately punch 3 holes through what would have been the chest area. The specialist winces like you just kicked her ancestor's grave. The mainstream archaeological record tells us that clothing manufacture was one of humanity's greatest innovations, but they leave out the part where learning to make it properly meant the difference between survival and becoming a cautionary tale. Your tribe uses every part of an animal, sinew for thread, bone for needles, brain matter for tanning, yes, brain matter, and yes, you have to help extract it. You're tasked with removing sinew from the deer caught earlier, which involves finding the long tendons and carefully separating them without breaking the fibers. You snap 4 tendons in a row before anyone bothers to stop you. Here's a fringe theory some archaeologists whisper about at conferences. Early humans might have practiced on already dead tribe members' clothes before being allowed to make their own. Looking at your attempts, this makes perfect sense. You're given a practice hide, something so badly damaged it's basically leather Swiss cheese, and a bone needle. The needle is beautiful, honestly, carved with tiny decorative marks that suggest someone spent hours making it. You break it within minutes by trying to force it through too many layers at once. The clothing you need for survival requires multiple layers, each serving a specific purpose. The inner layer wicks moisture, achieved through specific hair-on orientations. The middle insulates, requiring careful selection of winter pelts, and the outer repels water and wind, treated with rendered fats and oils in ways that would make a chemist weep with envy. You're currently naked, except for a loincloth that someone threw at you out of pity, shivering so hard your teeth sound like a rattlesnake's tail. When the specialist finally takes over, her movements are pure poetry. She selects hides based on thickness, flexibility, and hair density, examining each with the expertise of someone whose mistakes mean death. Historians still debate whether Paleolithic humans understood the principles of thermal dynamics, but watching her layer different pelts with air gaps for insulation suggests they understood it better than your physics professor. She creates a tunic in about an hour that would probably sell for thousands in a boutique. If boutiques accepted currency like haunted by the bear's spirit and may attract predators in mating season, you try to help by offering to sew on some decorative elements, shells and teeth that other tribe members wear as status symbols. The specialist looks at your work, then at you, then back at your work, and carefully removes every single attachment. She redoes them properly, but places them in positions that you gradually realize spell out some kind of message. When you finally put on the completed outfit, the children burst into fresh laughter. Apparently, the bead arrangement announces to everyone that you have the survival skills of a newborn and should not be left unsupervised. The final insult comes when you're given boots, in your time. Shoes come in sizes and styles. Here, boots are made by wrapping your feet in hide, stuffing the gaps with grass for insulation, and hoping for the best. The specialist measures your soft, uncalloused feet with visible disdain. She's seen baby feet tougher than yours. The boots she creates are functional, but somehow manage to make you walk like a drunk penguin on ice skates. Every step sounds like you're smuggling angry mice. As night falls, you're at least clothed, though you look like a craft store exploded on a scarecrow. The fancy jacket you brought from the future sits in a pile with other useless things, like your broken phone and the energy bar wrappers you've been saving, because nobody here understands why you'd wrap food in thin, crinkly tree bark. Your new outfit weighs about 40 pounds, smells like a rendering plant, and somehow you're still cold, but you're alive, which in the Ice Age is what passes for high fashion. The evening gathering begins, and you're acutely aware that this is the Ice Age equivalent of scrolling through everyone's highlight reel, except instead of Valencia filters and humble brags, it's raw demonstrations of actual competence. The fire crackles in the center of the cave as tribe members take turns showing off their daily accomplishments. Someone displays a new spear point they've napped, its edges so sharp they could split a falling hair. Another demonstrates a complex trap mechanism using sinew and bent saplings. You sit there clutching the rabbit fur you accidentally tore earlier while trying to help with skinning, hoping nobody asks about your contributions. The social dynamics here are brutally straightforward. No hiding behind a carefully curated online persona or witty bio. Your worth is measured in tangible skills. Can you track? Can you make fire? Can you identify which mushrooms will feed the tribe versus which ones will make everyone see ancestor spirits for 3 days? You can do none of these things. In your time, you had 10,000 followers who loved your coffee shop reviews. Here, the only thing following you is the suspicion that you're too incompetent to survive winter. A young woman demonstrates a new weaving technique she's developed, creating a basket so tight it can hold water. The tribe makes appreciative sounds that you're starting to recognize as the prehistoric equivalent of likes and shares. When she's done, all eyes turn to you. This is your moment. You stand up, clear your throat, and attempt to explain the concept of a podcast. The hand gestures you use to indicate talking into the void for invisible listeners are apparently identical to the ones for possessed by evil spirits. Several people back away slowly. The tribe's storyteller, a master of oral tradition whose memory contains generations of survival knowledge, begins the nightly entertainment. But this isn't Netflix. This is one person using voice modulation, shadow puppets on the cave wall, an interpretive dance to recreate the history of your people. He tells of the great mammoth hunt of 3 winters past, and everyone nods along, adding details and corrections. It's collaborative storytelling at its finest, except when you try to contribute by making what you think are mammoth sounds. The noise you produce causes actual concern that you're having some kind of seizure. Here's something bizarre that archaeologists have found. Ice Age humans definitely had humor, and evidence suggests they even had what we might recognize as memes, repeated jokes and images that showed up in cave art across vast distances. The problem is, you don't get any of their jokes. Someone makes a gesture that sends the entire cave into hysterics, something about a ground sloth and 2 rocks. You laugh along, but your timing is off, and you laugh too long. That awkward extended laugh that marks you as someone who definitely didn't get it. The prehistoric equivalent of explaining a joke involves more interpretive dance, which somehow makes it even less funny. Your attempts to impress the tribe with modern knowledge backfire spectacularly. You try to draw a wheel in the dirt, thinking you'll blow their minds with revolutionary technology. The tribe elder examines it, nods politely, then points out that A, they know what circles are, you condescending time traveler, and B, have you seen the terrain? Where exactly would you roll this wheel when everything is either ice, swamp, or vertical cliff? She demonstrates by pushing a round rock down a slope, where it immediately gets stuck in the first snowdrift. The romance situation is equally grim. Without dating apps, you have to rely on actual personality and survival skills, both of which you're severely lacking. You watch others engage in what you gradually realize is flirting, showing off prime cuts of meat, demonstrating superior fire-starting skills, or casually mentioning how many predators they've fought off this week. Your attempt to impress someone by showing them your really cool scar from when you had your appendix removed just confuses everyone. They've seen real scars, from battles with nature that actually meant something. One of the hunters tries to teach you the art of making cordage from plant fibers, a skill so basic that toddlers here master it before they can properly walk. You watch his fingers twist and splice fibers into strong rope with a movement so practiced they're basically autonomous. When you try, you create what can generously be called angry plant spaghetti. He patiently shows you again, slower this time, the way you might teach a particularly dim child or a surprisingly intelligent bear. The evening winds down with people pairing off into family groups, and you realize with crushing clarity that without your phone, you have no idea what to do with your hands. You've tried whittling, resulted in a stick that's somehow less useful than when it started. Attempted to join a singing circle. You don't know the words, the melody, or apparently even the right species of sound to make. And briefly considered starting a cave painting before remembering your artistic skills peaked at stick figures. As you lie down on your designated sleeping spot, the draftiest corner, naturally, You can hear the soft sounds of a successful tribe settling in for the night. Whispered conversations, gentle laughter, the satisfied sighs of people who earned their rest. You've contributed nothing today except entertainment value, and even that was unintentional. In your time. This would be when you'd scroll through your phone until 3 a.m., numbing the existential dread with memes. Here, you just have to lie with your thoughts and the growing certainty that if social media existed, you'd be getting ratioed by Neanderthals. Morning breath in your era means a quick brush and maybe some mouthwash before your coffee. Morning breath in the Ice Age means waking up with a mouth that tastes like something crawled in there, started a family, and then that family died of natural causes. You run your tongue over your teeth and immediately regret having nerve endings. It's been 3 weeks since you arrived in this frozen hellscape, and your dental situation has gone from could use a cleaning to archaeological dig site. The diet here isn't exactly conducive to oral health. Forget your balanced meals and carefully portioned snacks. Here, you eat when something dies, and you eat everything that won't immediately poison you. Yesterday's menu included stringy mammoth meat that required 40 minutes of chewing per bite, some roots that could double as industrial sandpaper, and dried berries with the consistency of small pebbles. Your jaw muscles have developed more in 3 weeks than in your entire previous life of eating processed foods and smoothie bowls. You watch an elderly tribe member, and by elderly, we mean she's hit the ripe old age of 40, clean her teeth with a frayed stick. She's chewing one end until it forms bristles, then scrubbing with practiced efficiency. You try to replicate this, selecting what looks like a good stick. First mistake. Not all wood is created equal. The stick you chose releases a bitter sap that makes your entire mouth go numb. The old woman laughs, a raspy sound that shows off her remaining teeth, and hands you a proper cleaning twig from her collection. The mainstream dental archaeology tells us that prehistoric humans actually had relatively healthy teeth due to their low-sugar diet. What they don't mention is the trade-off. Constant wear from grit in food, cracked teeth from using them as tools, and the delightful sensation of meat fibers permanently wedged between molars. You've been using your teeth to help strip sinew badly, crack nuts worse, and once, memorably, to try opening what you thought was a shellfish but turned out to be a rock. That mistake cost you a chunk of incisor that the tribe healer examined with the kind of expression usually reserved for watching someone eat soup with a fork. Here's something historians still debate. Did prehistoric humans understand the connection between oral hygiene and overall health? Watching your tribe, the answer seems to be better than you do. They have specific routines, chewing certain leaves after meals, using pine needles to clean between teeth, and regularly rinsing with water that's been boiled with antimicrobial herbs. You, meanwhile, just discovered that the mint-like plant you've been chewing to freshen your breath is actually a mild hallucinogenic, which explains why everyone's been looking extra furry lately. The real dental nightmare begins when you develop what modern dentistry would call a minor cavity, but what Ice Age medicine calls that hole in your face that might kill you. There's no Novocaine here, no high-speed drills, no pleasant dental hygienist asking about your weekend plans. The tribe's healer, who doubles as dentist, surgeon, and distributor of suspicious mushrooms, examines your mouth with the bedside manner of someone inspecting dubious meat. Her treatment options are limited but creative. First, she tries packing the cavity with a mixture of honey and herbs, which would be great if honey was available, and if the herbs weren't just random plants she's experimenting with. What she actually uses is tree resin mixed with what you hope is medicinal clay, but might just be dirt. The application process involves her jamming this mixture into your tooth hole with a stick, while two strong hunters hold you down because anesthetic is about 41,000 years away from being invented. The infection that follows is spectacular. Your face swells up like you're storing nuts for winter, and the pain makes you nostalgic for the time you merely had mammoth dung in your hair. The healer's solution? Bloodletting. Because apparently the answer to something hurts is let's make something else hurt more to distract from it. She uses an obsidian blade to make small cuts around the swelling, and you discover that it's possible to invent new curse words using only grunts and whimpers. Watching others eat becomes torture. They tear into tough meat with strong teeth, crack bones for marrow with molars that could probably bite through steel, and smile without wincing. You're relegated to soup, and not good soup. This is whatever fell in the pot soup, pre-chewed by someone else, usually a grandmother who pities you, because your dental situation has reduced you to basically an adult baby bird. The humiliation of being fed pre-masticated food by a toothless elder who has better gums than you is a low point, even by your already subterranean standards. The children find your swollen face hilarious. They've started a game where they puff out their cheeks and stumble around making exaggerated pain noises. It's surprisingly accurate. One particularly clever kid has even added the detail of holding his jaw while trying to chew, complete with your signature whimper-grunt combination. You'd be impressed by the observational skills if you weren't so busy trying to figure out if it's possible to die from embarrassment. By the time the swelling goes down, thanks to the healer's final treatment of wait and see if you die, you've lost weight you couldn't afford to lose and gained a new appreciation for modern dentistry. Your remaining teeth feel loose, like they're considering abandoning ship. The cleaning stick has become your new religion. You carry it everywhere, obsessively scrubbing after every meal. The tribe approves of this newfound dedication to oral hygiene, though they seem concerned about your habit of crying while you do it. The spring gathering has arrived, and with it, the Ice Age equivalent of speed dating. If speed dating involved competitive mammoth impressions and strategic placement of fermented fruit breath, tribes from the region converge at a traditional meeting ground, a clearing where the snow has melted just enough to reveal mud that immediately ruins whatever dignity you had left. You watch as people who actually know how to survive display their most attractive qualities: the ability to build shelters, create fire in wet conditions, and not die from exposure. Meanwhile, you're still figuring out which end of a spear is the pointy one. The mating displays begin at dawn. A young hunter demonstrates his prowess by wrestling a log he's painted to look like a bear, which would be impressive if everyone didn't know it was a log. Still, the gathered crowd makes appreciative noises because at least he's trying. When your turn comes, you attempt to show off your modern dance moves, which in the context of 30,000 BCE looks less like attracting a mate and more like you're being attacked by invisible bees. The interpretive mammoth dance you attempt, thinking it will show your humor and creativity, involves a trunk motion that apparently translates to a deeply offensive gesture about someone's mother and a ground sloth. Here's something anthropologists argue about endlessly. How did prehistoric humans actually select mates? Watching this gathering, it becomes clear that the process involved a complex mixture of practical skills, physical prowess, and whoever smelled the least like rotting meat. You fail on all counts. Your practical skills peaked at almost starting a fire once it was already smoldering. Your physical prowess extends to running away from danger slightly faster than you used to. And your scent, well, the diplomatic description would be unique. The women here have standards that make your dating app matches look desperately unselective. They're evaluating potential mates based on real survival criteria. Can he hunt? Can he build shelter? Will his genetic contribution result in offspring that won't immediately be eaten by dire wolves? You watch one woman test a suitor by handing him a piece of flint and gesturing at a hide that needs scraping. He produces a perfect tool in minutes. When she hands you the same test, you create what can generously be called sharp garbage and somehow manage to cut yourself in the process. She pats your shoulder with the same energy someone might use to console a three-legged dog. Your attempts at grooming for the event have made things worse. In your time, you had products, deodorant, cologne, that expensive beard oil you bought but never really understood. Here, grooming involves scraping dirt off with other dirt and hoping for the best. You tried to create soap from ash and animal fat, following half-remembered instructions from a survival show. The result is a substance that somehow makes you dirtier and attracts flies with disturbing enthusiasm. The flies seem to be the only living things interested in getting close to you. Body odor here isn't just accepted, it's information. People can tell where you've been, what you've eaten, and your general health status from your scent. Your modern nose, accustomed to artificial fragrances and regular bathing, interprets everyone as smelling like a gym bag left in a fish market during a heat wave. You've tried rubbing yourself with pine needles and mint-like plants, creating a bouquet that screams desperate forest salad rather than capable provider. The tactical placement of scent becomes apparent during the evening gatherings. Successful hunters position themselves downwind of potential mates after a fresh kill, letting the smell of "I can provide meat" waft over. Others who found honey, a rare treat, make sure everyone knows through strategic finger-licking and loud appreciation noises. You position yourself downwind of everyone after the garlic-like bulbs you ate for lunch, create a personal exclusion zone that even the camp dogs respect. A fringe theory suggests that Paleolithic humans might have used early forms of makeup or body decoration for these gatherings. This is confirmed when you see people applying ochre and charcoal in patterns that enhance their features. Your attempt to join in results in what looks like you've face-planted in a tar pit. The design you were going for, mystical and attractive, comes out more raccoon with emotional problems. A kind tribeswoman tries to fix it, but eventually gives up and suggests maybe you'd look better in the dark. The comedy peak comes during the strength competitions. Men and women alike demonstrate their physical capabilities by lifting rocks, throwing spears, and wrestling. You volunteer for what seems like the easiest event, carrying water from the stream to the camp. It's only about 200 yards. With modern buckets, this would be simple. With sewn leather pouches that leak and weigh as much empty as your modern gym bag does full, it's a disaster. You make it halfway before dropping one pouch, overcompensating, and creating a mudslide that takes out 2 spectators and what was supposed to be tonight's dinner preparation area. As the sun sets, couples pair off based on the day's displays. The successful demonstrate mutual grooming behaviors, checking each other for parasites, sharing food, and engaging in what you recognize as actual chemistry. You sit alone by the fire, picking mud out of your ears from your earlier performance. When someone approaches, your heart lifts. Could someone actually be interested? But no, it's just the tribe elder coming to gently suggest that maybe you should focus on personal growth and not dying before thinking about reproduction. She phrases it more delicately, but the hand gesture she makes clearly indicates that your genes are not currently in demand. Cave hunting season has arrived, and you're about to discover that finding shelter in the Ice Age is like playing Monopoly, where all the properties are already owned by things that can eat you. Your current cave is getting crowded as more family groups arrive for winter, and the subtle hints that you should find your own space have progressed to people literally moving your sleeping fur outside while you're using it. The message is clear. Time to go house hunting in a market where the sellers are bears. The mortgage is measured in survival odds, and the only home inspection involves checking for resident carnivores. You join a scouting party led by an experienced cave finder, whose job title roughly translates to person who checks dark holes without dying. He has a mental map of every cave system within a 3-day walk, complete with annotations like good acoustics but floods in spring, and nice southern exposure but currently occupied by something large that growls. You contribute by pointing out what you think is a promising cave entrance, but turns out to be a shadow that looks different when clouds move. The first cave you investigate seems perfect, dry, spacious, with what real estate agents would call an open floor plan. The cave finder sniffs the air, examines some scratches on the wall, and immediately starts backing out. His urgency suggests this is less fixer-upper and more active crime scene. You learn that the scratches are recent cave bear markings, and that pile of bones in the corner isn't decor. It's what's left of the previous tenants. The bear is probably out for lunch, which means you're potentially on the menu for dinner. Historians love to debate whether prehistoric humans actively competed with cave bears for prime real estate, or just took whatever caves the bears didn't want, standing in a cave that smells like wet dog multiplied by death, looking at claw marks that go higher than you can reach. The answer seems obvious. The bears get first pick. You're basically squatting in whatever geological formation the apex predators deem too drafty, too damp, or too inconveniently located to their favorite salmon streams. The second cave is occupied by bats. Not just a few bats. We're talking a ceiling that looks like it's made of furry, squeaking carpet. The guano situation is beyond description. It's feet deep in places, and the ammonia smell makes your eyes water from the entrance. The cave finder considers it briefly, probably calculating whether the excellent insulation properties of bat droppings outweigh the certainty of respiratory diseases. You veto it by virtue of already gagging, though your opinion carries about as much weight as the bat droppings do. Cave number 3 has promise until you notice the prehistoric equivalent of a for rent sign. Human skulls arranged at the entrance, not old, ceremonial skulls, freshish ones with what appears to be teeth marks. The local tribe has marked this as their territory in the clearest possible terms. The cave finder makes a series of respectful gestures and backs away slowly. You learn that cave disputes between human groups are settled through elaborate negotiations, or failing that, whoever has the most people willing to throw rocks at high velocity. The politics of cave ownership are more complex than your modern homeowners association. There are summer caves and winter caves, with some families rotating between them based on seasonal hunting patterns. Some caves are communal, others strictly single-family. The best caves get passed down through generations like rent-controlled apartments, and breaking these traditional claims is a good way to end up like those skulls at cave number 3. You suggest a democratic voting system for cave allocation, and receive looks typically reserved for people who suggest jumping off cliffs to see if they can fly. Your fourth viewing is what the cave finder calls a starter cave. Ice Age speak for, this will probably kill you, but slowly. It's more of a severe rock overhang than an actual cave, offering protection from approximately 40% of the elements. The floor tilts at an angle that ensures you'll wake up each morning in a pile at the lower end. Water drips constantly from one corner, creating a permanent ice patch in winter and a mosquito breeding ground in summer. But it's unoccupied, probably because even the animals have standards. The wildlife situation around each potential home requires careful consideration. Cave number 5 is lovely, but located in what's clearly a predator highway, tracks everywhere, bones scattered like confetti, and that general feeling that you're being watched by multiple species, considering whether you're worth the effort. The cave finder demonstrates how to identify scat from various predators. Wolf, manageable with fire. Bear, seasonal problem. Saber-toothed cat, time to find a new neighborhood. You contribute by stepping in a fresh pile and tracking it throughout the rest of the tour. By late afternoon, you've seen enough caves to understand why your ancestors eventually invented agriculture and permanent settlements. Every potential home is a compromise between will definitely flood and will probably be eaten in. The cave finder finally shows you what he calls a special opportunity. A small cave that's dry, empty, and relatively predator-free. The catch? It's a 2-hour climb up a cliff face that would challenge modern equipment, let alone your stick and leather technology. He demonstrates the climb with the casual ease of someone who doesn't understand mortality. You make it about 10 feet before freezing, clinging to the rock face like moss with anxiety disorder. The day ends with you back at the original overcrowded cave, having secured nothing but bruises and a deeper appreciation for modern housing. The tribe looks at you with expressions ranging from pity to mild concern that you might attract predators with your failure pheromones. Your sleeping spot has gotten smaller. Someone's expanded their area into yours while you were gone. As you curl up in your ever-shrinking corner, you dream of studio apartments and security deposits. Wake briefly when something large snuffles past the cave entrance and realize that in the Ice Age housing market, not being eaten counts as a successful day. The splinter enters your palm during morning spear practice, a sliver of wood so small that in your time it wouldn't merit more than a band-aid and maybe a tetanus shot if you were feeling paranoid. Here, in the Ice Age, you've just started a countdown timer to either recovery or becoming a cautionary tale about why the gods invented antibiotics 40,000 years too late. You show it to the tribe healer, who examines your hand with the same expression someone might wear while calculating the odds of a terminal diagnosis. She begins treatment by calling over several people to hold you down, which seems excessive until you realize that Ice Age medicine operates on the principle of, if the treatment doesn't make you scream, it's probably not working. First comes the extraction attempt, using tools that look like they were designed by someone who heard a description of tweezers from someone who had never seen tweezers. These are basically 2 sharp rocks tied together with sinew. She digs into your palm while you discover new octaves in your vocal range. The splinter breaks off deeper in your hand, in your era. This means a quick trip to urgent care. Here, it means the healer must now perform what she clearly considers actual surgery. She produces an obsidian blade so sharp you can see individual skin cells separating as she cuts. There's no anesthetic, except the leather strip they shove between your teeth, and the knowledge that passing out would be considered poor form. The pain is educational. You learn that your nervous system can create sensations you didn't know existed, somewhere between burning and why has God abandoned me. Here's what mainstream medicine tells us about prehistoric wound care. They used honey, certain molds, and herbal poultices that actually had antimicrobial properties. What they don't tell you is the application process. which involves the healer chewing herbs into a paste, because mortars and pestles are for people whose hands aren't currently being excavated. Mixing it with substances you don't want to identify, and packing it into your wound while chanting what you hope are healing songs, but might just be her commenting on your pain tolerance to the audience that's gathered to watch. The infection sets in by day 3. Your hand swells to the size of a well-fed ground squirrel. Red streaks race up your arm like evil road maps, and the fever begins. Ice Age fever management involves being moved to the coldest part of the cave and having snow packed around you while you hallucinate conversations with your smartphone. The children find your fever dreams hilarious, especially the part where you try to swipe right on the cave wall and keep asking someone named Siri for directions to the nearest hospital. The healer's next treatment phase involves bloodletting, because apparently the answer to "I'm losing life force" is "let's speed up the process." She makes careful cuts along your arm with that same obsidian blade, allowing blood to flow into carved wooden bowls. The tribe examines the blood like sommeliers evaluating wine, discussing its color, consistency, and what it suggests about your chances. The consensus seems to be not great, but we've seen worse, which is hardly reassuring when you're the one leaking fluids. A fringe medical theory that archaeologists debate is whether prehistoric humans understood the concept of surgical amputation. As the healer starts examining your arm with the measuring eyes and calling for the really big obsidian blade, you become acutely aware that you might be about to contribute to this academic discussion. She tests your finger sensitivity by poking them with increasingly sharp objects, and when you can't feel 3 of them, she makes a mark on your wrist with charcoal. That's when you understand the mark isn't for decoration. The fever breaks just as the healer is explaining to other tribe members the best place to cut to ensure you don't immediately bleed out. Your dramatic recovery disappointments some of the younger hunters who are apparently looking forward to seeing advanced surgery. Instead, you're subjected to the final phase of treatment, maggot therapy. Yes, the healer deliberately introduces fly larvae to your wound to eat the dead tissue. It's exactly as horrifying as it sounds, feeling them moving under the bandage. But even through your disgust, you have to admit your hand starts looking less like spoiled meat. The social implications of your medical drama become apparent during your recovery. You've used up precious medical supplies, herbs that took months to gather, honey that could have fed children, and the healer's time when she could have been treating people with actual survival skills. The tribe's resource allocation discussions happen right in front of you, with various members arguing whether keeping you alive is a sound investment. The consensus seems to be probably not, but we're too deep in now to stop. Your hand eventually heals, though it never quite works right again. The scar tissue makes gripping tools an adventure, and you've lost enough sensitivity that you regularly burn yourself on hot stones without noticing. The healer declares the treatment a success because you're alive and retained most of your fingers. By Ice Age medical standards, this is practically a miracle. She gives you a small pouch of dried herbs to carry, though you suspect they're less for future medical emergencies and more to mark you as someone who requires constant supervision. The entire experience gives you a new appreciation for modern medicine's approach to minor injuries. In your time, a splinter was an inconvenience. Here, it was almost a death sentence that required the medical equivalent of a tribal GoFundMe to treat. As you flex your still functional but permanently weird hand, you realize that the phrase, "it's just a flesh wound," carries very different weight when antibiotics don't exist and the local anesthetic is a stick to bite on. The children have added your medical adventure to their repertoire of games, taking turns pretending to faint dramatically while others rush over with imaginary maggots. It would be flattering if it wasn't so accurate. The morning hunting party returns with news that sends ripples of excitement through the cave. They've spotted a massive herd of reindeer moving through the valley. This is the Ice Age equivalent of a job fair, and everyone immediately begins discussing their roles in the upcoming hunt. The spear makers sharpen points, the trackers plan routes, the butchers prepare their tools. You sit there with your still wonky hand, wondering if moral support counts as a contribution. The hunt coordinator looks at you, sighs deeply, and assigns you to supplies management, which everyone knows means stay at camp and try not to burn it down. Your coding skills, which once earned you 6 figures and stock options, are about as useful here as a chocolate teapot in a wildfire. You try to explain the concept of algorithms to the hunt planner, thinking maybe you can optimize their approach. Using sticks and stones, you create what you consider a brilliant visualization of efficient hunting patterns. The planner listens politely, then rearranges your sticks to show why your plan would result in the entire tribe running off a cliff. It turns out that real-world pathfinding doesn't care about your theoretical shortest route calculations when the route goes through a saber-toothed cat's territory. The skills that matter here are brutally practical. The track reader can tell from a bent blade of grass which direction an animal went, how long ago, and whether it was limping. You can barely tell grass from not grass. The weather predictor reads cloud formations and wind patterns like you used to read Stack Overflow. She points to a cloud formation and predicts rain in 2 days with the confidence of someone whose incorrect forecasts mean death. Your contribution to meteorology involves saying looks cloudy and being wrong even about that. Historians debate whether prehistoric humans had specialized roles or if everyone was a generalist. Watching your tribe, it's clear that while everyone knows the basics, true expertise is valued and cultivated. Or the master napper creates tools that are genuinely artistic, each flake removed with purpose and precision. When you try to make a simple cutting tool, you produce what charitably could be called sharp garbage, and realistically should be called a waste of good flint. The napper fixes your attempt but leaves one edge deliberately dull, creating a tool that even you can't accidentally maim yourself with. Your attempt to contribute through project management goes about as well as expected. You try to create a task delegation system using marked stones to represent different jobs. The tribe listens to your explanation of agile methodology with the patience of people who've learned you sometimes have interesting ideas buried under layers of incomprehensible nonsense. They then ignore your system entirely and continue with their traditional approach, which has the advantage of actually working and not requiring 40-minute daily stand-up meetings. The one modern skill you thought might transfer, basic mathematics, fails spectacularly when you try to help with resource calculation. You confidently announce that based on the tribe's size and caloric needs, one reindeer should last 5 days. The quartermaster laughs until she cries, then explains that your calculations fail to account for spoilage, sharing customs with neighboring tribes, offerings to spirits, the pregnant women who need extra portions, the elders who need softer cuts, and the fact that Barry, not his real name, but the sound he makes, eats like 3 people. Your spreadsheet mentality crashes against the reality of communal living, where fair doesn't mean equal, and survival trumps arithmetic. During tool maintenance time, you volunteer to help sharpen spears, thinking how hard could it be? The answer is very hard when you don't understand the relationship between stone grain, angle of pressure, and the phases of napping. You turn a perfectly functional spearhead into what looks like an angry tooth with commitment issues. The toolmaker takes it away before you can do more damage, muttering something that definitely translates to, "This is why we can't have nice things." Your suggestion to innovate the tribe's hunting techniques with disruption earns you the kind of looks previously reserved for your mammoth mating dance. You draw diagrams of complex pulley systems in the dirt, explaining how the tribe could create mechanical advantages. An elder points out that creating your rope and log contraption would take more calories than just throwing spears like they've successfully done for generations. Plus, your pulley system assumes the existence of wheels, which, as previously established, are useless in a landscape made of vertical surfaces and swamps. The children, at least, appreciate your contributions to their education. You teach them counting, games, and basic patterns, skills that would prepare them for standardized testing if that existed, and mattered more than knowing which mushrooms cause the dancing death. They enjoy your stories about the future until you realize you're essentially describing magic to them. So the food just appears at your cave when you press the magic stones? Yes, but you need money. What's money? It's pretend value we all agree on. This conversation ends with the children convinced you're either a prophet or insane. As the tribe prepares for tomorrow's hunt, you're assigned to stay behind with the elderly and very young. Your job will be to maintain the fire, supervised, prepare healing herbs, pre-sorted by someone competent, and coordinate defense if predators come, which everyone understands means scream very loudly for help. You've gone from senior software developer to intern camp sitter, and honestly, given your track record, this feels like a promotion. At least when you fail at tending fire, the evidence burns away. When you failed at coding, the Git history preserved your shame forever. The morning sky looks like bruised fruit, purple-black clouds piling up on the horizon in a way that makes the weather reader start issuing rapid-fire instructions. You've learned enough grunt speak by now to understand the gist. Big storm coming. Probably kill us all. Prepare for ice hell. In your time, weather forecasts came with percentages and satellite imagery. Here, the forecast is delivered by a woman reading bird flight patterns and the way her joints ache, and she's been more accurate than your weather app ever was. Everyone springs into action with the efficiency of people who know that reading the sky wrong means becoming archaeological evidence. The tribe begins storm preparations that make your hurricane prep of buying extra batteries look laughably inadequate. They're reinforcing the cave entrance with wooden barriers, creating windbreaks from woven branches and mud, and moving all supplies to the highest, driest corners. You're tasked with helping to waterproof gaps with a mixture of animal fat and clay, which sounds simple until you realize you're essentially caulking a cave with prehistoric materials while the temperature drops fast enough to freeze your fingers mid-application. The ice storm hits that night like nature's own artillery barrage. You thought you understood cold, but this is something else entirely. A living thing that finds every gap in your clothing and shelter, turning the cave into what feels like the inside of a freezer that hates you personally. The wind doesn't just howl, it screams through the valley with enough force to throw ice shards horizontally. The carefully constructed windbreaks shake and strain while everyone huddles together, sharing body heat and the growing certainty that maybe the weather reader's joint pain was understating things. Here's something climate historians argue about. Did Ice Age humans understand weather patterns well enough to predict severe storms? Huddled in a cave while ice pellets machine gun the entrance and the temperature drops low enough to freeze spit before it hits the ground? The answer is obvious. The weather reader didn't just predict this storm, She predicted its duration, 3 days, its peak intensity, tonight, and which parts of the cave would stay driest, not where you initially set up. Your contribution was suggesting that storms usually move east to west based on something you half remembered from a documentary. She politely corrected you with hand gestures that indicated wind patterns here follow the valley systems, not your assumptions. By the second night, the real danger becomes clear. It's not just the cold, though that's bad enough to kill within hours of exposure. It's the ice building up everywhere, turning every surface into a skating rink designed by someone who actively wishes you harm. The cave entrance, despite all preparations, is now blocked by a wall of ice and snow. The air inside grows thick and stale as oxygen becomes a limited resource. The elders begin rationing breath, taking shallow inhalations and moving as little as possible. You, with your modern lungs accustomed to climate-controlled environments, feel like you're suffocating in slow motion. The tribe's ice-reading skills become literally life-saving when cracks appear in the cave ceiling. The sound, a crystalline creaking that makes everyone freeze, indicates that ice buildup above is stressing the rock. The weather reader and cave finder have a rapid consultation that involves examining the crack patterns like they're reading fortune-telling bones. Their conclusion: everyone needs to move to the back chamber immediately. You help carry supplies, slipping twice on the ice floor and creating a small avalanche of stored nuts that roll into the fire. The smell of burning food adds insult to potentially fatal injury. Your attempt to help with ice removal goes predictably wrong. Armed with a stone scraper, you attack the entrance ice buildup with enthusiasm that the experienced ice workers watch with alarm. You're chipping at what you think is just surface ice when the weather reader tackles you, away from the spot. She points out the difference between regular ice and the load-bearing ice formation that's currently the only thing keeping several tons of frozen death from sliding into your living space. Your ice removal technique would have basically invited the glacier in for tea. A fringe theory among archaeologists suggests that Ice Age humans might have used controlled fire placement to manage ice buildup in caves. This seems brilliant until you watch the actual implementation. It requires understanding thermal dynamics at a level that makes your physics degree look like finger painting. Too much heat in the wrong place causes ice to melt and refreeze in worse positions. Too little does nothing. The fire tenders work in shifts, moving embers to specific spots with the precision of surgeons, creating tiny melt channels that direct water away from living spaces without compromising structural ice. The third day brings a new problem: cabin fever, Ice Age edition. In your time, being stuck inside meant Netflix and snacks. Here, it means sitting in the dark, sharing the same recycled air with 30 other people and their digestive systems, while listening to ice trying to murder you. The storyteller attempts to maintain morale with tales of worse storms that ancestors survived, though you notice these stories have suspiciously few details about how many people actually made it through. Your contribution to morale involves trying to teach everyone 99 bottles of beer, which fails when you realize they have no concept of bottles, beer, or taking one down and passing it around. When the storm finally breaks, the world outside is unrecognizable. The ice has reshaped everything, filling valleys, creating new cliff faces, and turning familiar landmarks into crystalline death traps. The immediate priority is checking if neighboring tribes survived. The weather reader examines the sky, nods with satisfaction, and declares the worst has passed. You emerge from the cave, slip immediately on the ice-covered ground, and slide 30 feet down a slope that wasn't there 3 days ago. As the tribe prepares for the complex work of post-storm survival, finding new hunting grounds, checking cached supplies, determining which paths are now impassable, you're assigned to the crucial task of sitting very still and trying not to create any new ice-related disasters. It's a job you're finally qualified for. The spring foraging expedition seems like a simple enough task. Even you can't possibly mess up picking berries, right? The foraging leader, a woman who can apparently smell edible plants from 2 valleys away, brings you along out of what you suspect is pity, mixed with morbid curiosity about how you'll manage to fail at gathering stationary food. She points out the first rule of Ice Age foraging. Everything is trying to kill you, especially the things that look harmless. That pretty red berry, death. The mushroom that smells like almonds, super death. The leaves that look exactly like the edible ones she just showed you, death with hallucinations. Your modern brain, trained on clearly labeled produce sections and helpful ingredient lists, struggles with the reality that nature doesn't come with nutritional labels or allergy warnings. The foraging leader shows you 3 different plants that look identical to your untrained eye. One is nutritious, one causes mild stomach upset, and one makes your liver shut down like a government office at 4:59 p.m. She demonstrates the differences using smell, texture, and something about the way the leaves attach to the stem that you pretend to understand while privately accepting you're going to die of salad. You confidently identify what you think is wild garlic, proud of remembering something from that survival show you watched once. The foraging leader sniffs it, makes a face that suggests deep concern for your continued existence, and explains that you found what they call false garlic, or, more accurately, the last thing you'll ever taste. She shows you real wild garlic, pointing out subtle differences that seem about as clear as the differences between identical twins in a dark room. Your contribution to the foraging basket remains empty, while everyone else fills theirs with confidently identified food. The mainstream botanical history tells us that early humans had extensive knowledge of local flora. What it doesn't mention is that this knowledge was paid for in bodies. The foraging leader shows you the memorial markers, small stone cairns placed where tribe members made fatal identification errors. There are a lot of cairns. She points to a fresh one and explains that last winter, someone mistook hemlock root for something edible during a desperate food shortage. You add touching any plant ever to your growing list of things that might kill you. Here's where things get interesting. The foraging leader starts teaching you the taste testing protocol, and it's not the casual nibble and see approach you imagined. It's a multi-day process involving skin contact tests, lip tests, tongue tests, and tiny ingestion amounts with waiting periods between each step. One wrong move and you're fertilizer. She demonstrates with a plant she's pretty sure is safe, which isn't the confidence level you'd prefer when discussing potential poisoning. The testing takes 3 days. For one plant, there are literally thousands of plants here. Your attempt to use modern logic fails spectacularly when you suggest organizing plants by visual similarity. The foraging leader laughs until she needs to sit down, then explains that plants that look identical can have completely different properties depending on soil, season, and whether the plant spirits are feeling generous. She shows you 2 identical-looking roots. One is food. One is what shamans use for vision quests, and not the fun kind. The commune with your dead ancestors while your body tries to turn itself inside out kind. The mushroom situation is even worse. In your time, you bought mushrooms in neat plastic containers. Here, mushroom identification requires understanding subtle differences in gill patterns, spore prints, and growth substrates. The foraging leader shows you a mushroom that's edible when cooked but toxic raw, edible in spring but poisonous in fall, and safe for most people but deadly if you happen to have what she describes through gestures as the weak liver spirit. You decide your personal mushroom policy will be absolutely never. During an attempt to redeem yourself, you spot what looks like berries and excitedly call everyone over. The foraging party approaches with the caution of bomb disposal experts, which should have been your first clue. These aren't berries, they're insect galls that happen to be round and berry-colored. The foraging leader patiently explains that your berries are actually wasp nurseries, and breaking them open would release extremely angry inhabitants. You back away slowly, while everyone else harvests actual food around your discovery zone. A fringe ethnobotanical theory suggests prehistoric humans might have used systematic trial and error, with small populations testing new plants. Watching your tribes approach, this seems optimistic. They use animals as testers, watching what birds and mammals eat, but with the caveat that plenty of animals can digest things that would liquefy human organs. So the testing protocol seems to be less systematic and more Bob drew the short stick and has to try the weird tuber. By day's end, your basket contains 3 items: a rock that you thought was a potato, some leaves that the foraging leader approved but everyone else seemed suspicious of, and a handful of berries that a 5-year-old picked for you out of pity. The child's basket contains 40 different edible plants, 2 types of medicinal herbs, and what will become tonight's seasoning. You've learned that everything in nature is actively plotting your death, except for the very few things that aren't. And telling the difference requires expertise you'll never live long enough to develop. The foraging leader summarizes your performance with surprising kindness, using words that translate roughly to "not dead yet," which is better than expected. She suggests you stick to tasks that don't involve plant identification, like carrying baskets for people who know what they're doing. As you trudge back to camp, you reflect on how your ancestors survived thousands of years of trial and error botany. Natural selection clearly took a day off when your bloodline squeaked through, probably because some prehistoric forager took pity on your equally incompetent ancestor and shared their non-poisonous berries. The migration announcement comes during the morning meal. The herds are moving south, and the tribe must follow or starve. In your time, moving meant hiring movers and complaining about packing. Here, it means strapping everything you own to your back and walking across a landscape that views your survival as optional. The distance to the winter grounds is many days, which you've learned can mean anything from "you'll probably make it" to "half of us will become wolf snacks." Your feet, soft from a lifetime of supportive shoes and paved surfaces, already hurt just thinking about it. Packing for migration is an art form you immediately fail at. Everyone else creates compact, efficient bundles using techniques passed down through generations. Your attempt at packing resembles a garbage bag that gains sentience and poor decision-making skills. The patient woman teaching you bundle tying shows you the same knot 15 times. You create something that looks right, but falls apart the moment you lift it, scattering your meager possessions across the cave floor. A toddler waddles over and ties a perfect bundle with chubby fingers, while maintaining eye contact that speaks volumes about your competence. The walking begins at dawn, and within an hour you understand why everyone looked at your feet with such pity. The terrain isn't just rough, it's actively hostile. Every step is a negotiation with rocks that shift, ice that lurks under innocent-looking snow, and mud that grabs your boots like it has abandonment issues are. The homemade boots that seemed adequate in camp reveal their true nature, torture devices that channel every sharp rock directly into your soft, modern soles. You develop blisters on your blisters, a feat that the tribe healer examines with professional interest. Here's what historians debate about prehistoric migrations. Were they organized movements or chaotic scrambles? Watching your tribe move like a well-oiled machine through terrain that would challenge mountain goats. It's clearly the former. Everyone has a role, from scouts ranging ahead to check for dangers to sweepers making sure no one falls behind. Your role is cargo that walks itself badly. You're placed in the middle of the group with the pregnant women and elders, though they outpace you with embarrassing ease. A heavily pregnant woman literally walks backwards at one point to check if you're still alive. The dire wolves make their appearance on day 2. They follow the migration like a moving buffet, picking off the weak and slow. The tribe has protocols for this, specific formations, noise patterns, and fire strategies. Your job during wolf encounters is to stand very still and try not to smell like fear, which is difficult when fear is leaking out of every pore. The wolves seem particularly interested in you, probably because you walk like an injured deer and smell like anxiety marinated in failure. A wolf makes eye contact with you during one close encounter, and its expression clearly says, "Really? This one's still alive?" Your attempt to contribute by suggesting rest breaks earns looks of disbelief. Rest breaks are for when someone is actively dying, not because your feet hurt. The migration pace is calculated precisely. Too fast and the weakest die. Too slow and everyone dies when winter catches you in the open. You suggest camping early one day because you found a nice spot. The scouts look at your chosen campsite, a depression that would flood at the first rain, surrounded by obvious predator tracks, and keep walking without comment. You follow because the alternative is becoming a cautionary tale. The transportation method for those who can't walk involves being dragged on travois made of poles and hides. You eye these enviously until you see who gets to ride. People with broken legs, women in active labor, and the actively dying. The bar for too injured to walk is so high it's basically in orbit. Your blistered feet and general exhaustion don't even register on the sympathy scale. A man with what appears to be a partially detached foot is still walking, using a spear as a crutch and making better time than you. Navigation without GPS reveals another skill you lack entirely. The pathfinders read the landscape like a book, following invisible roads marked by subtle changes in vegetation, rock formations, and things you can't even perceive. They navigate by stars when clear, by wind patterns when cloudy, and by some sixth sense when both fail. You get lost going to relieve yourself behind a rock formation that's literally within sight of the group. They have to send someone to find you, and the rescuer is the same 5-year-old who helped you forage, now also better at tracking than you. A fringe theory suggests prehistoric humans might have sung or chanted during migrations to maintain morale and pace. Your tribe does indeed have walking songs, rhythmic pieces that help coordinate movement and warn of dangers. Your attempt to contribute 100 bottles of beer adapted to 100 chunks of meat breaks the rhythm so badly that people actually stumble. You're politely but firmly asked to save your creative contributions for when everyone isn't trying to not die. By day 5, your feet are a disaster zone that would qualify for humanitarian aid. The healer examines them each evening with the expression of someone watching a slow-motion catastrophe. She applies poultices that sting like angry wasps and wraps them in hides. But there's only so much prehistoric medicine can do for feet that weren't designed for actual use. You develop a walking style that minimizes pain by basically not bending anything, resulting in a gait that makes the tribe's dogs concerned you're having a neurological event. The moment you see the winter grounds, a sheltered valley with caves and abundant water, you nearly cry with relief. You've made it. Technically, you're alive. Technically, you contributed nothing except being a mobile warning about the dangers of soft living, but you didn't actually die or get anyone else killed, which exceeds expectations. As the tribe begins setting up winter camp with practiced efficiency, you collapse where you stand. The migration leader pats your shoulder with something that might be approval or might be surprised that you survived. Your feet look like they went through a meat grinder that was having a bad day. But you're here. In the Ice Age, that counts as winning. The miscommunication starts innocently enough. You're trying to tell the hunting party about the deer tracks you spotted near the river, using what you believe are the correct hand gestures. Unfortunately, your deer by the water somehow translates to "my mother mates with fish," which causes immediate confusion and mild offense. The lead hunter stares at you for a long moment, possibly trying to determine if you're making a joke, having a stroke, or actually claiming aquatic ancestry. When you repeat the gestures more emphatically, thinking volume will help. You accidentally escalate to what apparently means, "and I'd like to watch." The grunt language you've been learning is more complex than any programming language you've ever encountered, and significantly less forgiving of syntax errors. Each sound carries meaning modified by tone, length, and accompanying body language. The word for fire, depending on inflection, can also mean passion, danger, cooking, or that thing that happened to Grok's eyebrows. You've been walking around for weeks asking people to passion you some meat, wondering why everyone keeps their distance. Your attempt to share the concept of movies during evening storytelling goes catastrophically wrong. You try to explain moving pictures on screens, using shadow puppets on the cave wall as demonstration. Your hand shadows, meant to show action sequences, are interpreted as prophetic visions. The tribe shaman becomes very interested when your dinosaur fighting robot, Shadowplay, is understood as the ancestors will return as metal spirits to eat the sun. By morning, half the tribe is preparing for an apocalypse you accidentally predicted while trying to explain Jurassic Park. Here's what linguistic anthropologists debate. How quickly did prehistoric humans develop complex language? Watching your tribe communicate with efficiency that makes modern corporate meetings look like toddler babble. It's clear they've had complex language for a very long time. They have specific words for different types of snow, 43 and counting, various stages of ice formation, each potentially lethal in unique ways, and somehow, incredibly, 17 different terms for the ways you failed at basic tasks. You've become a walking dictionary expansion pack for incompetence. The movie reference problem becomes acute when you're stressed. During a tense moment when the tribe spots predator tracks near camp, you blurt out "clever girl" in English. The silence that follows is profound. The tracker who found the prints thinks you're complimenting her, which would be nice, except the tone and context suggest you're either hitting on her during a crisis or having some kind of breakdown. Your attempt to explain involves hand gestures that accidentally communicate, "I wish to marry the saber-toothed cat," which raises even more concerns. Your pop culture references create a mythology you never intended. Your humming of movie themes is interpreted as spirit songs. The Star Wars Imperial March, which you absent-mindedly hum while doing tedious tasks, is now associated with approaching danger, because you were humming it when bears showed up that one time. The tribe starts using it as an actual warning system, which would be helpful if you could remember not to hum it randomly, causing unnecessary panic. You've Pavloved an entire tribe with John Williams. The communication breakdown reaches critical mass during important negotiations with a neighboring tribe. You're included because someone needs to carry things, not because anyone expects you to contribute to diplomacy. However, when you sneeze during a crucial moment, the sound you make is apparently identical to their word for "your leader sleeps with caribou." The visiting delegation goes very still. The silence stretches. Your tribe's negotiator tries to explain that you're touched by spirits, their polite way of saying mentally incompetent, but the damage is done. The fight that breaks out is relatively minor by Ice Age standards, mostly shoving and competitive growling, but you're definitely the cause. Your attempts to help by shouting what you think are calming words only escalate things. It turns out your peace and friends sounds remarkably like "eat poison, enemies" in their dialect. The 5-year-old, who's become your unofficial handler, has to physically cover your mouth while adults sort things out. The negotiations eventually resume, but you're banished to the far side of camp with strict instructions to make no sounds whatsoever. A fringe theory suggests prehistoric humans might have had humor similar to ours. Watching your tribe, this is depressingly true. They definitely understand sarcasm, particularly when aimed at you. After the negotiation disaster, you become the subject of what can only be described as the world's first roast. Tribe members take turns imitating your greatest communication failures, including your infamous "I need to make water" incident, where you accidentally announced your intention to create a new ocean. The impression of you trying to explain movies is particularly popular, complete with exaggerated hand-waving and confused grunting. The breaking point comes when you try to warn about thin ice using what you're certain are the right words. Instead, you announce that the sky is melting and everyone should mate immediately. The resulting panic, confusion, awkward proposition acceptance from someone you definitely weren't addressing makes the tribe elder call a formal meeting. Through patient translation involving 3 different people who understand your unique dialect of wrong, she explains that you're now banned from using anything but the most basic vocabulary. Point and grunt only. No complex sentences, no warnings. Definitely no negotiations. As you sit by the fire that night, reduced to communication methods that make a toddler look articulate, you realize that every human advancement, from language to writing to emoji, has been an attempt to avoid exactly the kind of misunderstandings you create daily. Your movie quotes, delivered to people who think cave paintings are high-tech, have accidentally created at least 3 new religions and 1 war. The tribe's children have started a game called "What Did Steps in Poop Mean to Say?", where they compete to guess your actual intentions versus what comes out of your mouth. The fact that there's never a clear winner says everything about your communication skills. Tomorrow, you'll try again with simpler words. Though at this point, even your silence is somehow offensive in 3 neighboring dialects. The evening entertainment options in the Ice Age make your complaints about Netflix's selection seem like the whining of a spoiled child who doesn't appreciate their 40,000 viewing choices. As darkness falls and the tribe settles in for another night of not dying, the recreational activities begin. First up, watching the fire. Not a fire dance, not fire juggling, just watching it burn. The sad part is, after 3 months without screens, you're finding the flames genuinely mesmerizing. You catch yourself creating plot lines for different logs. That chunky one is clearly the protagonist, fighting against consumption while the smaller twigs play supporting roles. Your suggestion of charades is met with confusion, since literally all communication here involves elaborate gesturing. When you try to explain the concept of acting out movie titles for fun, the tribe concludes you're having another one of your episodes. They've started categorizing your episodes. There's the future visions, you trying to explain technology, the spirit dancing, your attempts at recreating TikTok dances, and the mouth madness, anytime you try to sing pop songs. Tonight's attempt to introduce them to leisure activities gets filed under "the sad one needs attention again." The storyteller begins the night's entertainment, an epic tale about the time Gork fought 3 cave bears with nothing but a rabbit bone and determination. You've heard this story 17 times, and it gets more elaborate with each telling. Tonight, the bears can apparently fly. The audience loves it, gasping at the same plot points, laughing at Gork's creative use of bear dung as a distraction tactic. You try to stay engaged, but your mind, poisoned by years of quick-cut editing and second-screen scrolling, keeps wandering. You find yourself mentally adding CGI to the shadow puppets on the cave wall. Here's what entertainment historians rarely discuss: the sheer endurance required for Ice Age fun. The storyteller's tale goes on for 3 hours, 3 hours, of the same story everyone knows by heart. It's like watching someone live stream painting a wall, except the wall is made of words, and the paint is repetitive descriptions of bear fur texture. When it finally ends, the musical portion begins. Someone pulls out a bone flute that sounds like a dying goose trying to yodel. This is considered the height of musical sophistication, and people actually request specific songs, though they all sound like variations on noise that might attract predators. Your attempt to introduce new entertainment falls flat when you try to teach them Duck Duck Goose. First, they don't understand why you'd want to identify waterfowl repeatedly. When you explain it's a game, they become concerned about your hunting strategies. The concept of running in circles for fun is so foreign that the healer checks you for fever. When you demonstrate by tapping heads and running, you trigger everyone's prey drive instincts. The resulting chaos involves 3 people tackling you for your own safety while shouting warnings about invisible predators. The tribe does have games, but they're all thinly disguised survival training. Hide and seek is actually practice not being eaten. Tag is outrun the predator. Even their version of dice, carved bones with symbols, is used primarily for divination and deciding who gets the dangerous jobs. Your suggestion of playing just for fun is met with the kind of looks usually reserved for people who suggest jumping off cliffs to see if humans can fly. Fun, apparently, is what happens when you successfully don't die. It's not a separate activity. A fringe theory suggests prehistoric humans had more leisure time than agricultural societies. Watching your tribe, this might be technically true, but leisure means sitting very still while remaining vigilant for death. The entertainment is less relaxing pastime and more how to stay sane while trapped in a cave with the same 30 people for months. Someone starts the nightly lice-picking circle, which is simultaneously grooming, social bonding, and the most exciting thing happening. You participate reluctantly, finding more entertainment in the lice than you'd care to admit. At least they're doing something. The pinnacle of entertainment technology is the shadow puppet show, performed by the tribe's expert, who can somehow make realistic animal shapes using just his hands and firelight. You watch him create a perfect mammoth, complete with swaying trunk, and realize this is basically prehistoric IMAX. When you try to contribute by making what you consider a decent rabbit, the children scream, not in delight, in terror. Your rabbit apparently looks like the shadow demon that haunts their nightmares. The shadow master gently moves you away from the light and creates an actual rabbit to calm the traumatized toddlers. As the evening winds down, people pair off for the ultimate Ice Age entertainment, talking, just talking, about the weather trying to kill us, the food, scarce and possibly poisonous, and their plans for tomorrow, survive, hopefully. You attempt to join a conversation about track patterns, but quickly realize you have nothing to contribute when you can't tell a rabbit print from a wolf print from a weirdly shaped leaf. The discussion moves on to the philosophical implications of whether animals have spirits, leaving you even further behind. You lie in your sleeping furs, staring at the cave ceiling, and realize you've forgotten what your phone screen looks like. The muscle memory is still there. Your thumb twitches for scrolling that will never come, but the details are fading. In their place, you're developing a disturbing ability to find entertainment in watching ice form patterns on rock. You catch yourself excitedly anticipating tomorrow night's entertainment, the exact same stories, the same bone flute, the same shadow puppets. The scary part is you're actually looking forward to it. Stockholm Syndrome, apparently, applies to boring entertainment when it's the only entertainment available. The tribe settles into sleep, and you're left with the original human entertainment, your own thoughts. Without the constant dopamine hits of notifications and updates, your brain feels like it's eating itself out of boredom. You compose tweets no one will ever read, plan YouTube videos no one will ever see, and mentally write Yelp reviews of caves. 1 star, poor lighting, terrible amenities, owner tried to eat me. Tomorrow will bring the same entertainment options, fire watching, story listening, and trying not to die. You're starting to understand why your ancestors invented civilization. It wasn't for safety or agriculture or social advancement. It was because they were bored out of their prehistoric minds. The announcement comes during morning meal. A massive herd has been spotted 2 valleys over, and the entire tribe will migrate to follow it. This isn't the careful, planned migration of seasons. This is an opportunity chase, the kind that determines whether the tribe thrives or merely survives through winter. You've been here just long enough to understand what this means. Everything you've failed at so far will now be tested in a final exam, where the grading scale runs from barely adequate to frozen corpse by the trail. Your track record suggests which end you'll land on. Packing happens with frightening efficiency. Everyone knows their role, their load, their place in the march. You're given what amounts to the toddler's bundle, light enough that your inevitable dropping of it won't doom anyone important. The real weight is psychological. You're about to attempt walking for days across terrain that views human ankles as a design flaw, while keeping pace with people who consider a broken leg a minor inconvenience. Your feet, still recovering from the last migration, have filed formal complaints with management. The march begins before dawn, and immediately you remember why humans invented vehicles. The pace is relentless, not fast, but constant, like being pursued by a very patient steamroller. Within an hour, you're already falling behind the elders, one of whom is literally blind and navigating by stick tapping. A pregnant woman passes you, carrying twice your load while also knitting something from sinew. She doesn't even look winded. You're wheezing like broken bagpipes, and you've barely cleared the first hill. By midday, the reality of your situation becomes crystal clear. You're not going to make it. Not in the dramatic collapse and die way. The tribe won't let that happen. But in the become such a burden that keeping you alive costs more calories than you could ever contribute way. The hunters have started taking turns walking beside you, not for company, but to carry your bundle when you inevitably stumble, which is often. Your specialized skill of finding the only loose rock in any given square meter of ground continues to amaze everyone. Here's what migration stories don't tell you: the psychological toll of being the weakest link in a survival chain. Every time someone has to slow down for you, it's calories they won't have later. Every time the group pauses because you've fallen again, it's daylight lost that could mean the difference between reaching shelter and becoming ice sculptures. The patient encouragement from tribe members makes it worse. They're not angry, they're resigned, like watching a three-legged rabbit trying to outrun wolves. Everyone knows how this story ends. The weather, sensing dramatic opportunity, turns vicious on day 2. The wind picks up, driving ice crystals horizontal, turning exposed skin into geological features. The tribe responds with practiced efficiency, adjusting face coverings and formation to protect the vulnerable. You respond by walking directly into the wind with your mouth open, inhaling enough ice to significantly lower your core temperature. The 5-year-old, who's become your unofficial guardian, sighs with disappointment that transcends language barriers and shows you, again, how to breathe through the fur face covering. Your final contribution to tribal survival comes in the form of what you'll generously call scouting. While stumbling off the main path to avoid slowing everyone down again, you discover a sheltered overhang. It's not much, barely qualifies as a cave, but it's protection from the wind. You attempt to communicate this discovery, forgetting your communication ban, and accidentally tell everyone you found the place where spirits mate with rocks. Despite the linguistic failure, they investigate and find your shelter actually useful. It becomes the night's rest spot, saving everyone from camping in the open during what becomes a vicious ice storm. A fringe archaeological theory suggests some prehistoric humans survived through sheer luck rather than skill, lying in that crowded shelter, listening to wind try to peel the world apart outside. You're living proof. Your survival to this point has been a comedy of errors that somehow hasn't ended in tragedy. The healer examines your frostbitten extremities with professional interest, probably mentally cataloguing which parts you'll lose if infection sets in. She applies her poultices with the air of someone making a token gesture, like putting a band-aid on a severed limb. The final day of migration dawns clear and brutal. The destination is visible, a valley rich with game signs and shelter possibilities. It's maybe 6 hours for the tribe, 12 for you if you survive. The group makes a decision that surprises no one. The main tribe will push ahead to secure the best camping spots and begin hunting preparations. A small group will stay with you and the other truly weak members. The other weak members are a woman in active labor and an elder who might actually be dead, but nobody wants to check. This is your peer group now. The last miles are a blur of pain, cold, and existential crisis. Your modern body, designed for office chairs and climate control, rebels against every step. Your escort group, 2 teenage hunters who drew the short straws, alternate between carrying you and dragging you, depending on terrain. They develop a system of grunts that efficiently communicate their decreasing respect for your survival instincts. When you finally stumble into the new camp as darkness falls, the celebration for the successful migration carefully doesn't include your arrival. You collapse by the fire, and someone throws a fur over you, not out of kindness, but because a frozen corpse would be inconvenient to deal with right now. The tribe is already establishing their new territory, setting up efficient camps, planning tomorrow's hunt. You're assigned to tomorrow's critical task of staying conscious and trying not to require medical attention. As sleep takes you, you see your reflection in a piece of ice, gaunt, frostbitten, wearing furs that smell like death's laundry basket. 6 months ago, you were complaining about slow Wi-Fi and your favorite coffee shop changing their oat milk brand. Now you're just another marginal member of a tribe that tolerates your existence because humans, even prehistoric ones, are occasionally too kind for their own good. You've survived. Technically, you've contributed, marginally. You've learned that every modern comfort you took for granted was built on the frozen bones of ancestors who actually knew what they were doing. As the celebration continues around you, songs of successful migration, stories of the hunt to come, you drift off knowing that tomorrow you'll wake up still useless, still soft, still completely unprepared for this life. But you'll wake up, which in the Ice Age is the only metric that really matters. The wind howls softer now, like nature's own lullaby, carrying the smoke from dying fires across the valley. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm of the tribe settling in for sleep. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, hunts you can't join, skills you'll fail to learn, social dynamics you'll misunderstand. But tonight, wrapped in furs that smell of your repeated failures, you're just another human who made it through another day when the world was ice and death and the stubborn refusal to quit. The stars above shine cold and distant, same as they'll shine 30,000 years from now when your descendants complain about their phones being too slow. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed, carrying the memory of every stumble, every fall, every moment when giving up would have been easier. But you didn't give up. You might be the worst hunter, the most useless gatherer, the living embodiment of evolutionary dead weight. But you're still here, still breathing, still part of the endless human story of surviving things we're not equipped to survive. Sleep comes like an old friend, easing the pain, blurring the edges of your harsh reality. In your dreams, there are no predators, no frozen wastelands, no disappointed looks from competent tribe members. There's just warmth and safety, and the vague memory of a time when your biggest worry was choosing what to watch before bed. The fire crackles its ancient song, the same sound that's comforted humans since we first learned to steal flame from the gods. And you sleep, deep and dreamless, while the Ice Age continues its patient work of trying to erase you from history. But not tonight. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you'll fail again. But tonight, against all odds and your complete lack of survival skills, you're still here. And in the Ice Age, that's enough. That's everything. That's the whole impossible, improbable miracle of being human. Sweet dreams. Time traveler. You've earned them.